Thank you everyone for being in the room, and some people might be watching on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us on this rainy and cozy Sunday afternoon for our third plant clinic, and a very happy International Climate Change Day for everyone. So every day should be International Climate Change Day. But yeah, today we pay a special homage to, being more mindful about, the habits that we have and being more conscious about our impact on the environment. So that leads us to the topic today, which is when life gives you waste, make compost. So this session is a part of the series of Get Growing, a challenge whereby we encourage you to be growing an edible plant to get in touch with the food that you eat. So for me, my journey is that, I've started gardening only less than a year ago. So like understanding the basics like composting really matters a lot for me. And I'm hoping to learn more from you guys, and maybe we can tackle it in a way that's more fun and not so serious, because when things are very serious, you stress out and then you panic and then you give up. Yeah, so together with me is my co-facilitator Nitya. She's a culinary anthropologist and also the TV host of Edible Wow series on CNA. So if you're bored during this session, I strongly recommend it. Yeah, we keep binge watching during this period of COVID. We are a fan. Yeah. So
yeah, it's funny. I've heard that from my friends quite a while, and I'm like, I had no idea Edible Why was a lockdown show. Do you know what I mean? So that part's quite funny.
I think it's great because you bring us to different places, like in Singapore and also all over the world, and we look into like what nature has to offer in terms of like wild like herbs and stuff like that. It's very enriching. Like, yeah, looking forward to more content from you. Yeah, but before we dive into the session, I would like to ask Nitya, like, what's your experience like with composting, and what would you like to learn from our two speakers today?
So I think, like, for me, composting is, I feel it's just a kind of natural end product of the food system. So I've played around with different kinds of composting, and it's always been something like, I've been quite lucky to be around friends who've always been quite interested in this end product stage of food production and food consumption. I've seen it in like large scales. I remember like one of the things I was really impressed with was the Green School Bali. The way they had like compostable toilets and all the stuff in the cafe, everything was being fed back into systems. But I think like, you see these things, you see it happening in California, you see it happening in Bali, and you think, oh, like, okay, it's okay for them to do that there because they're progressive and it's natural, it's open spaces. But in Singapore, like, what does that look like? Can I do that in my home? Is that possible? What is the setup? Is it going to be like smelly and all those things? So I've tried different ones. So right now I've got a open wooden compost bin next to my little mini garden, and I just layer in like egg cartons, like paper egg cartons, toilet paper rolls when we have them, and then basically fruit compost, right? So basically fruit peels, no seeds. I don't put any seeds in there because so that's the thing. So those are the kind of things, like those myths that I would like to hear a bit more. So no seeds, no citrus, lots of banana peels, eggshells, coffee grounds, avocado skins, and then the like stems of like greens, right? Like moringa stems and like the leaves, that just the cuttings that I throw in. So far it's doing well. There's no smell. That's what I was so surprised by. Like before I'd always done closed composting. So with open composting, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get like bugs. It's going to be smelly. I live in Little India. Like, we have a lot of stuff happening around in the air. So I was like, oh wow, it's going to smell bad. But it doesn't. Like, there is no smell. I've brought my nose so close to it and I've been like taking a deep inhale multiple times and there's no smell. So it's incredible. And so yeah, I would like to ask you guys about some of the myths that we hear. Like you can't put citrus in there, you can't put seeds. You need to always layer it with soil or some kind of brown matter. Like how much of that do you put? Those kind of questions. And I mean, I've known Chui Fen for a long time now. So I'm quite interested to hear this new thing that she's doing as well.
Nice. Before we bombard our two speakers with curious questions. Maybe I will do a little introduction of them. So Cui Fei is the founder of Food Citizen, and she's also the founding member of Foodscape Collective. So I think her expertise are generally in the field of composting. It's more in terms of like a community composting. Yeah, I'd love to find out a bit more about how to activate my neighborhood to be part of this movement as well. And Han Jing, I think she was sharing with me that, you know, she started composting a few years ago when I think she was in university. And I think she does it in a HDB setting. So I'm curious to find out like how do your parents, like, are they supportive? Do they help you save stuff? Do you attract like rats to your level? Like, are you hated by your neighbors? So like, these are some of the curious questions I want to know so that I can, you know, tread carefully in my neighborhood and not get thrown out. Yeah, so.
Can you imagine? Sorry, getting thrown out because of composting. Like, yeah, that's quite fun.
It's possible. Yeah, maybe Cui Fei, would you like to share with us what Food Citizen is and, you know, what's the journey so far? Yeah.
Most people wouldn't have heard of Food Citizen, but you may have heard about Foodscape Collective. Foodscape Collective is about 5 years old now, and I did start it with 3 other friends. And because it's been about 5 years, we started thinking, you know, we were doing this as a very informal thing amongst friends and interested friends, and that friend group kind of expanded. And over the last 5 years, we also connected with so many people across the Singapore foodscape. And we're thinking, how can we take it to the next level? So as a collective, we feel that we would like to transform it into an ecosystem of people, of groups, of businesses, charities, working together for a fair and inclusive circular food system for all. And at the same time, there were so many people, government agencies, schools, businesses, writing into us and saying, we really love what you guys stand for. Can you come and do workshops and talks and whatnot for us? And at the time, we were all really like holding down our full-time jobs, our studies, and we're like, no, we really love to, but we have no time and no capacity to do that. So once we decided we wanted to grow as an ecosystem, some of us were like, okay, if we do have this capacity and we do see that there's a demand, and also at the same time, very critically, we realized that we have learned something that is worth sharing, worth bringing it out there, not just as a public outreach, but if we do something like a program in a school, it really changes lives. This is where we realized that we can do more. So Food Citizen is a spin-off education business venture where it works with the people in this network, in this ecosystem, whereby we distill the knowledge that individuals have, that the collective has, into workshops, talks, mentorships possibly. And these are delivered by the same people. So maybe, for example, somebody is very interested in food fermentation, which I have no much clue about, but someone else in the network does. This is where we can actually arrange for someone in the network to be able to do that for you. So one of the reasons why we thought to name this business venture Food Citizen is because we believe that everyone is on our personal journeys, and we can create the environment we need to grow as conscious citizens of Earth. So by citizen, we're not thinking about citizen of Singapore, but really how can we all grow as conscious citizens? And as a business for good, we want to be able to set aside some of our earnings so that we can do the same for the lower income community and also fund some of the community work by the collective.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Trayvon setting up, when they were working on setting up Foodscape Collective, I think we were all intersecting at Growell, at the shop house in Rowell, where it was like a creative space for sustainability and urban farming. And it's so interesting to hear about Food Citizen. And I mean, I think with any one of us, who've been working in sustainability or urban farming and all of that, it's impact, right? You want to make sure whatever you're sharing has impact. And it's not just empty, trendy stuff, So it's really nice to hear about what Food Citizen is doing. But you also run, you're also part of a community garden, right?
Yes.
Where I guess you do a lot of your composting.
Yes, yes, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So maybe if I can, yeah. So I do a lot of my composting with my neighbors, and actually that is where I really learn so much about composting. It's really through the community garden space that I have. But at the same time, I thought I would bring you back a few more years, at least from my own perspective of why I got interested in composting in the first place. Um, so could I maybe do that?
For sure.
Just to that check in. Okay. Yeah, so about 10 years ago, one of my colleagues was asking me, hey, do you know anything about composting? And at that time, I was already working as an environmental scientist, and my colleagues recognized me as one person who actually want to do more beyond just doing stuff at the workplace. But then at the time, I was like, oh, I've read about it. I've never seen anyone doing composting. I have no idea, what it is. So I was thinking, hey, I have a home garden. Maybe I can try. So I was Googling and then I was like, okay, it looks simple enough. Let me go and dig a hole in the garden. But then in my mind, I was like, oh, I need to bury something in the soil. Like what would people think about me? Maybe I'm a murderer. And so I didn't want to. I waited literally until midnight before everybody else is asleep. And then I wandered out in pure darkness and I was trying to dig the soil and the soil was super hard. But then I put in my food scraps and then, okay, cover up and rush back in again. So it really felt like I was this thief in the night, trying to do
Yes.
something. And then because I couldn't see whatever I was doing, like a few days later, I was like, oh, I need to go back when it's daytime, but I have to dig the soil. So I went back and dig the soil, and it was interesting because every few days I could see the soil was changing. My little hole with the food scraps was changing, and from being very hard and clayey and it started changing color. It started becoming more dark. It started becoming more crumbly, and then it started having life. Like I started seeing earthworms and other life in the soil, and that was actually my very first time, even as a nature lover, um, actually welcoming the sight of earthworms in my garden, because I realized that my simple act of putting in the food scraps into the soil has really made a difference, and I could see the difference. But I think I must admit that at that time, really it was just like this little experiment, right? And then wow, it really did something in that small hole, but I didn't have that impetus to do more. But what helped me at that time was one of my friends, Bhavani. She had this blog called Eco Walk the Talk. And because I knew Bhavani in person, I knew that she really practiced what she says she does. And on her blog, she has examples both from India and Singapore. So I really look at that as a very good reference. And at that time, for me, digging a hole in the soil, I felt like I had this little recipe. Like, okay, I need to put like 9 parts food scraps, like kitchen scraps, fruit peels, and 1 part tea leaves. Like, I was very, very happy with my little recipe. So what I do now, actually, the one that you see in the slide with my community is very different. Obviously, the recipe is very different too. And it was really because about 7 years ago, I started a community garden with my neighbors. I was inspired by something that I saw in Sydney in Australia. And I wanted to do something like that in Singapore. But I had no clue how to, start a garden. So there was this lady who was learning permaculture at that time. Her name is Debbie Han. And she very kindly came down to my space and she said, look, I will design this garden for you, and it's going to be based on permaculture. And quite coincidentally, 2 of my neighbors were self-trained in permaculture. So they were very attracted. They came down and we started our garden together. So I literally learned composting, not through workshops, but actually cutting leaves and actually doing the compost together with my neighbors. And initially, they didn't really explain what they were doing. We were just doing together. So it was really learning by experiencing. And one thing I really wanted to share, which I feel that maybe a lot of Singaporeans do not have this experience, is how, because my neighbors, when we created our compost pile, initially there was no food scraps. We were just making use of whatever we have. So there were trees, there were bushes, they were always dropping leaves and twigs. We make use of the the twigs and leaves that had fallen onto the ground as our main material. We make use of our garden trimmings as our main material. And one of the things I found that I had to literally get out of my ego is the idea of sweeping the leaves. You know how in Singapore we have this idea of Singapore as a very clean city, and so you have cleaners to clean away everything. And so if your park has lots of fallen leaves, you know, the cleaner is not doing a good job. So literally when I see my neighbors sweeping, I was like, why are they sweeping? I cannot understand. And then along the way, my logical mind understood. But then there's the ego part that was like, what would my other neighbors think if I start sweeping the floor? But it is maybe a bit of a meditation practice. You start seeing the world with a new lens. I started to understand what my neighbors really meant when they said that we are really blessed. We have all the resources that we needed. So it's like, instead of seeing the park was really untidy, I started to see that, wow, you know, we have so much leaves, awesome. And what is wonderful is that when you just make use of plant material to make your compost smells like the rainforest soil. It smells really good. And how I started, or how we started adding food scraps into our compost is that because we are part of this network, Foodscape Collective, the network have people who are commercial farmers, who are urban gardeners, who are natural farmers, people who make compost. They come by and they look at my compost and they're like, okay, good stuff. But this is lacking something. You need to add food. I was like, why do you need to add food? And what they told me is that when you have your compost that is purely plant-based, it is the fungi that is breaking down the compost. But your soil, when you actually understand what soil is, soil has good fungi and it has good bacteria and nutrients. And the good bacteria comes from breaking down food scraps in your compost. And your food scraps is also going to give you nutrients, which is different from your plant materials. And it also matters of, you know, whether you are making this compost for growing trees or growing food, because what trees need is different from what your food plants need. But essentially, if you think of the idea of a cycle, like what your food plants need, essentially when they break down, they give back the nutrients that what the plants need. So it's a cycle. And so if you want to grow food, it's also a good idea to put food into your compost. So it has really been a bit of a learning journey. And I'm very glad that when I reach out to people on Facebook or whatever, and I said, hey, do you have food scraps? I want to use that for composting. People actually said yes. And as a collective, we have initiatives where we have like compost collaborations, whereby food scrap givers would connect with compost makers, and etc. And we also had so much workshops on composting. And so right now what Food Citizen is doing, so it's Hanjing and myself and a few others, we are also bringing compost programs to schools and other places. And this is where I feel that we can do so much more. Yeah, I think a lot more things to say about compost. But I think maybe I should stop here, and maybe Hanjing can share, or Nitya can ask the questions to keep it going.
No, Choi, but don't worry about it. It was a really nice sharing. I mean, I think Jaden as well, like she's also composting. I think all of us are in different stages of our compost journey. But I think the question that I think is on everybody's mind is, in Singapore, like, can you compost in small spaces, right? And Hanjing, like you're doing it in your HDB corridor. Do you want to tell us a little bit more? And then we can start asking the questions. Like Jaden and I have so many questions about like what can go in, what can't go in, you know?
Sure. So yeah, as you can see in the photo, that's my corridor. So I don't have much space. That's all I have. And yeah, so I really started composting when I was in university. I was studying sociology, and part of our studies is to understand how screwed up the world is. So we learn a lot about exploitation.
Sounds like a great degree.
Right? So you basically learn how horrible humans are lah. Yeah, and also how much damage we are causing. Yeah, and I remember one part of it was like I got so fed up. I was just like, okay, I'm done. Like I know my existence has caused some damage to this. So what can I give back? Like what can I do? So the first thing I wanted to do was reduce on my waste. And in my family, so we are plant-based, right? But because we cook a lot, there is a lot of food waste that's coming out from our kitchen. So like I eat an orange every day. My entire family does. So imagine we produce 28 worth of orange peels every week, and like banana peels. Like we eat one bunch of bananas a week. So a lot. Yeah. So basically, I decided, okay, I'm going to start composting. But how? So I went on the lovely Google and I started searching. But this was about 5 years ago. And at that time, like being green wasn't a thing in Singapore. There wasn't much info about composting. So what I learned was, I think from some website about how to basically make your own DIY compost bin. So if you see in the photo, the blue color one, that's the very first one I made. Yeah, so it's very, very simple. It's just a bucket with holes. Yeah, and that's it, right? And then I just followed whatever's on the internet and did what they said. But along the way, things screwed up because I didn't really understand the ratios. So basically, I took all the food scraps at home and I dumped it in. And then because HDB, right? So I didn't have direct access. I wasn't growing plants that time, so I didn't have much plant material. So I just threw in a bit of dried leaves, and I just left it. And of course, it stank, right? So it stank like mad. And then from then on, really, it was just about troubleshooting. So I experimented for like a good 2 to 3 years of various ratios of like trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And then like finally right now, like that's the system that I have going on. It's a 5-pot system, and I can compost all of my food scraps at home, like every single bit, which is a lot lah. Like every day we produce like this amount of food waste, and we cook 5 times a week. So yeah, and then like I'm so proud of it. And I always felt like when I was doing this, because we mentioned about parents and neighbors. So because this was something I started on my own, I didn't have spare cash, and I didn't want to trouble my parents. So I basically just looked around my house, like what can I find? So those 2 buckets you saw there is just broken buckets that my mom wanted to throw away, and then I just took it. Right, and then food waste is from home. The dried leaves is from downstairs. I went downstairs to scavenge for dried leaves, and there you go. And then the other pots were picked up along the way from downstairs and from other places around my neighborhood. Yeah. So
You say it's worth it?
for sure, definitely. Yeah. So I really, I always feel like the 5 years of trial and error that was going on, really like made me who I am today. So cliche, but because of all these failures that I got, when people come to me and they say, hey, my compost has this and this problem, I was like, okay, I know what you're talking about. I've been through that. It's fine. It'll work out. Like, this is what you need to do. Right? So yeah, I really think that compost is fun. It's something that everyone can do. If you have very little space, I have 5-pot system, but you can always start with 1, because that's what I did. And you easily just need a balcony to do it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Hanjing, I want to ask you a question. When you say 5 pots, right? Like how big are they? Like are those the blue buckets that you have?
So this is how do I make? So this is a normal bag size, right?
Yes.
Normal bag. This is the size of my first pot. So just a normal bag size.
Right.
Yeah. And then now, because my family cooks a lot, so besides that pot, I also have a few, I think 2 that's like slightly larger. So the thing about compost is like the larger the vessel, the faster the composting can take place. Because like you saw, Cui Fen's community garden is like one huge heap, right? Yeah. So when you have all this material piled up together, everything heats up quicker and breaks down faster. But small works well too. Like it's fine. It will work out.
Right.
What do you guys think about covering it? Do you need to cover your compost pile? Do you cover it? Even the
So
ones with the ones which are aerobic and you have air circulation in there with holes and all of that. Do you still cover them, or do you just leave it open?
So yeah, so what we are doing is aerobic composting, right? Which means you need oxygen.
Yes.
So what I did, the first mistake I made was to cover it because I was scared of smells. So I covered it with a like those airtight lid, and that was so bad. So what I then did was to just cover it loosely with a cloth, and I realized it works like way better because with the air circulation, actually things heat up faster and things don't smell. Because once it's aerobic, it doesn't smell. If it's anaerobic, it starts to get stinky. Yeah. And for those who are wondering whether pests come, no rats outside my corridor. The most I have is a resident lizard that lives in there.
The lizards are the funny guys, I think. Like they become so entitled to the space, right? They're like, I'm here all the time. This is my hangout joint where I have dinner. Like I have one around my compost bin as well. It's just like, it's just hanging out all the time. I've named it like Jeremy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So we've got Pauline asking like, how do you condense the food waste into those pots? Yeah, and actually I'm quite curious because I did my own DIY compost bin, and very soon I felt like it was quite full. So like when you have 5 and every day you are putting in for every meal, like how do you make sure that you have enough space, and when you know to stop, like not to overachieve and power up and then mess up the system?
Yeah, so I start with one bin, and then when it's full, then I move on to the next one. So the thing about composting is, if we are just starting out, like from scratch, you probably cannot take in your whole like everyday waste lah. Cause the thing with composting is, it uses bacteria, right? Like what Cui Fen said, bacteria and fungi. So it does take a while for all these bacteria to like colonize and build up. So the moment that you have them established, then is when they can really eat up the food really quickly. So initially when I started, remember the mistake I had when I piled everything in? So that was the first mistake because the bacteria colony wasn't established. But the moment that I got my first batch of compost, and then the second batch and third batch, everything was like very alive. So right now it's to the point where once I add in food scraps and then I do the 5 pots, when I come back, so technically 5 days, when I go back to the first one, like everything would have not decomposed completely, but you can see that everything is black in color. Like it's and everything will have condensed. Because food is like what, 70% made out of water. Don't quote me, but something like that. Yeah.
So what are the ratios that you play with? Like in terms of food scraps, so in terms of green matter or food waste to brown matter, how do you guys layer it?
So I think everyone has like a slightly different ratio. Like Cui Fen's community garden, I think Cui Fen would say 1:2, if I'm not wrong. Like one part.
So I learned from my neighbors, as I said. My neighbor was telling me, look, if you go and look for ratios and whatnot, you will get completely confused because everybody tells you a different ratio. So what we choose to do is we go by volume. The volume of the carbon or the browns is the same as the volume of the greens. Because like Han Jing says, the greens is a lot of water, it's a lot of air. When they break down, actually it is less. And what you do need is your so-called the ratio has to be your browns is more and the greens is less. But we wanted to make it simple for everyone, including children who comes to the garden. So we just go by ratio, volume. Yeah.
Yeah, but actually it depends on like the setup as well. So for Cui Fen's garden, it works for the 1:1 volume and ratio thing. But when you have a small compost setup, like I usually prefer to go more browns So you can start anywhere with 3:1. So 3 part browns to 1 part greens. Simply because maybe the excess, like the type of browns you have might be different. So for Cui-fen, it's a lot of like maybe branches and stuff like that, which is high in carbon. And maybe for me, I have like more paper waste and all that stuff, which maybe has less carbon. So as a good guide, it'll be 3:1, and then after that you can adjust it along the way lah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Hanjing brought up a very good point because the materials that we put in is different. The good thing about all the twigs and whatnot is they don't break down so fast, and because it is an aerobic pile, like you need oxygen. The items that do not break down so fast, they do provide some kind of oxygen to come in. So I think it really depends on how you do it and the materials that you have.
It's a bit like how soil needs some aeration, then you pack some bigger items inside so that it has a great circulation and things are more alive that way. Is it?
Yeah, like soil structure, right?
Yeah. What would you recommend for people who are just starting out? Like, what kind of ingredients do you like to put in your own compost? Like, let's say for food waste and things like that, or even for brown matters. I think brown matters, it depends on what you have at home, but in terms of food waste, like what would you recommend to get a good, like a very fertile compost?
Fertile compost. So for me,
Or
that's
good.
Like any vegetable scraps, any fruit that you have around. Maybe a caution to be citrus. Like, it's not that you can't compost. You can't compost it. I do, but it's just that the citrus peels, like, they're a bit more hardy. It takes a while to break down. So you definitely need to do some treatment to it. Be it like making ecoenzyme before that, bokashi. Yeah, because this, like, the enzymes break down the skin. So after that, when you add it to your compost pile, it speeds up the process. Yes. And then it also, like, removes away the foul smell. Yeah,
I mean, citrus is so good. Sorry. Yeah, I find citrus so good for ecoenzymes, like what you were saying. How do you make them?
Ecoenzyme?
Yeah. How would you make ecoenzymes with your citrus peels?
Oh, so it's the very basic Google recipe.
Yeah.
I think everyone has seen it. The 1:3:10.
Yeah, I did that too.
It's been amazing to see how many different types of ecoenzyme people can do with just a very simple recipe as well.
Do you guys use sorry, Tiffany?
No, I I wanted to respond to that question about the food scraps. Because in my community garden, it is not just the growers. Like normally a community garden just have like few growers, but we try to engage the whole estate and also people who live beyond the estate. So there are people who maybe live in Bukit Panjang, Bukit Gombak, people who come from other towns to give us their food scraps. Because I feel that there's a lot of people who want to give food scraps. Maybe they don't have time for composting, or maybe they don't have the space, or even if they make compost, they have no garden. So they do want to see if there is a community space that they can give to. So people do come. And so there are about 15 to 20 families who actually come to my community garden to give their food scraps. And as a very basic, we wanted to keep it simple because this garden is in a park and it's also right behind people's houses. So we know that there are people who maybe make compost with meat and whatnot. It's great, but because we are doing it with community, we want to keep it as simple as possible. So we're telling them, okay, yeah, just start with the fruit peels, the veggie scraps. And it's been very interesting, even with this very simple, basic idea. Like when we tell people to bring, sometimes they literally bring the whole like veggie. Like I'm like, I can cook this. Why do you want to compost it? And over time, as they watch us take their food scraps and turn them into compost, they start to realize, oh, maybe it's really just the trimmings. Really, you have to cut them a lot smaller because they give it to us, and then we still have to cut it up into smaller pieces. And also, we were adding, I guess, other things as well, including like used coffee from a pancake store and as well as a hotel. There was some people who make bokashi, and you get the pre-compost, which you do need to bury or put into compost. There was a lady who made kombucha, and for whatever reason, she gave us her Scooby. So the Scooby went in, and straight away we got black soldier flies, which was also good as long as you recognize them, you know what it is.
Yeah.
When we go to the market, the seller who sells pineapple, like he sells you the pineapple without the skin. So we take the skin and we put that into compost, and it also breaks down. Really interesting. Black soldier fly larvae, you can find them on the pineapple, and they are really good for composting. And I think the interesting thing is also how, so some of us, we add eggshells, and maybe for others, they put soybean. And I think because we are part of a community where we do have a space in Boon Lay to transform a park space, and we have a community compost there as well. Some of the growers were saying, oh no, we don't want soybean, because most of the soy that we have in Singapore is probably genetically modified, and some people are very cautious about that. So they say, no, we don't want that in our compost. So I think we were beginning with some really basic stuff, and then depending on our level of tolerance or being able to experiment, we add more. At one time, because Green Nudge was rescuing a lot of banana peels, we had 16 big trash bag worth of banana peels, which resulted in 3 compost piles created all at once. But that was also the time when we got compost in just 3 weeks. So it's super amazing. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I thought I read that compost is around like 3 to 6 months after you do it. So how do you get compost in 3 weeks?
It's really because the 3 to 6 months is really a lot of it is written in temperate countries, and it also applies to Singapore. If you know the picture that I had just now, if you just leave it sitting there, you don't touch it, if 6 months later you still can't get your compost. But if you have things that break down super fast, and the banana peels in 1 week, they are gone. And if it was just like small leaves that also break down equally fast, that's where your compost material, literally it looks like compost in just maybe 3 weeks. But what I'm learning also from the rest is that because the work is done by microbes, so maybe it looks like it's ready, but if you let it sit even longer, the microbes will break it down even more, and that's where your compost would have even more nutrients.
So I have some like quick fire questions on certain myths of what can go into compost. I mean, I'm personally very curious about this. So seeds, can you put in compost? Cooked food, is that okay? And what about meat and dairy and those kind of things, like bones? What do you guys think about these things going into your compost bin?
So for seeds, I definitely put it in.
Oh, you do?
I do. I just throw it in. And then it's quite amazing because sometimes then I have like pumpkin growing out of there, right? And then it's always quite cool because when seeds grow, it means that they are in a favorable environment, and it lets me know that my compost is doing well. Yeah. So I always just throw them in. Yeah. What's the other question? Cooked food.
Yeah.
Cooked food.
Cooked food, meat and dairy.
For cooked food, I guess it really depends on like how it's cooked. So if it's like curry, for example.
Oh, can you imagine?
Yeah, it's gonna like stink up the pile, right? So what I would say is like try to go raw if possible. Cooked food is like if it's like just steamed and stuff like barley, like herbal tea. I throw off those inside my bin. And then for meat, cooked food, if you really want to compost, there's always the bokashi method. Yeah, which that method you can take in like practically everything lah. Yeah, because it uses the enzymes and all to break down the food. Yeah.
Right. So bokashi is technically anaerobic, and then you add in enzymes to break down the organic matter, right?
Yes. Correct.
We have a question. So is compost a soil or is it a fertilizer?
It is. Soil is a very big thing. Soil is made of many things. Yeah, compost is like purely organic matter, I think. Yeah, but of course, if your compost pile you throw in soil, then things is like it can become soil lah, technically, like better soil. Maybe Tiffany can say more about this.
Yeah, so even though I have been making compost for quite a number of years now, I feel that there's still a lot of things I can learn. And one of the things that really blew my mind really recently is how, yes, you can do all the compost that you want. It looks like a lot of stuff, but it doesn't replace soil, and it is not soil. And if you put your seeds in you might get seedlings, but it is not soil because your structure is not the same. The components of soil is way more than just compost. And I think what blew my mind was how, yes, maybe I can do all this thing, but it doesn't build soil either. So if you are trying to replace your soil, you will realize that, hey, my soil level doesn't go up. But compost, I feel it adds the good bacteria, the good fungi, the nutrients. It brings back the good valuable stuff that you would otherwise throw away back into the soil, and the soil would benefit from it.
Yeah, so like compost is like soil amendment in many ways. So like if you I started with like very horrible clay soil, which there's no life at all, no earthworms, nothing inside. And then the moment I started doing composting and I added all of that stuff inside, then that's where like all the good stuff started happening. Like you can really see the texture of your soil change and stuff like that.
I just remembered the part of the question asked about whether it's a fertilizer. I wouldn't use the word fertilizer because I feel that fertilizer reminds me of those chemically created stuff, which to me is not necessarily good for the environment. And I feel that compost is quite different in the sense that you are not just adding like nitrogen, potassium, whatever. You are just giving good stuff to the soil. The soil becomes better. The plant takes in whatever it needs. And if you put in the right stuff, your plant will do super well, and you'll be healthy. And then I think there was the question about meat and cooked food. So like I said, most of my experience is in community spaces, and we don't want to introduce too many stuff, otherwise things might go wrong. But there are some people, because they help to maintain edible gardens in, say, like factory spaces, business spaces, schools. They do experiment, especially when your compost is very bioactive, like it's really creating compost really fast. So sometimes they put in maybe like fish and whatnot, and it disappears quickly with no smell. But it only I think really happens when you are really good at it, and your compost is really active. Personally, I would normally say that I would not put cooked food in my compost, also because I feel that it's a bit like baking a cake. You want to have the good ingredients, the right ingredients. And sometimes maybe if you do a stir fry or something, you add some other chemicals, or you add soya sauce, you add oil, and that is not necessarily what I want. So one of the things we learned, because we are in this community scene, is that sometimes also when people have composting machines, they think that, hey, the machine can just create the compost and I'll throw in everything and anything. And then they throw in a lot of curry, and what comes out is your compost looking like oil. And nobody actually wants to use it, and would your plant or your soil actually appreciate that as well? So I think it's really depending on what you want at the end of the day, also your intention.
What about like moldy fruits? Like stuff that's going off in your fridge, right? Like, would you throw that in?
Compost it. Just throw it in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's good fungi.
Wow. Yeah, there was once my housemates, they had like loaves of like stale bread like with green and white patches, and then they were asking me if they could compost it. I was like, I don't know, like because I'm still a beginner and I didn't want anything to mess up. Yeah, so we have a question from Brian. He would like to know more about, you know, if you guys can comment on about the soil life that starts to colonize the pile, right? Some people might freak out at the sight of like millipedes and wood lice. Yeah, so what is actually bad for, like, how do you identify if like the soil life is bad or is it good?
I feel like everything's part of nature. So they are all there to help with the decomposition process. So to me, originally, like when I first started, of course I freaked out because I wasn't like a garden person, right? But after that, I realized like when you have these little creatures inside, they actually speed up the whole process a lot faster. So then I learned to become friends with them, right? So of course, like you have neighbors who and parents who might freak out. So that's where you cover it lah, right? So you cover it with a cloth, or if you really find them unsightly, you can always just throw on like soy, and they will just be happy below there. Yeah, but all these soil organisms are very, very important for biodiversity and without them we won't have good soil, we won't have good compost.
I mean, I know Hanjing, when you said, you know, you started composting because you wanted to do something that's good, right? Like there was giving back and helping and reducing food waste was one of it. And I know today we talked a lot about composting and the nature of composting, but I wondered if you guys could, like, in the larger picture, right, with climate change, sustainability goals, biodiversity goals, where do you see how important composting is to this picture? If you guys could share a little bit, it'd be great.
Suivan, you want to go first?
I think when you start talking about sustainability goals and whatnot, my brain is like, okay, I need to shift topic.
No, like,
yeah,
you know,
but at the same time, I think composting is just if you heard of the word climate action, like taking action on climate change to really mitigate and try to make sure that we reduce the impact that we have on Earth, composting is a very good way to do that. Mainly, I think I will just speak whatever's in my mind.
of course.
Yeah, mainly because when we just throw away maybe our food scraps or anything else like the dried leaves, etc., they just get thrown away. Maybe you incinerate them, you release all these emissions, and all the good wonderful nutrients that is there is actually just dumped, it's gone. But if you can actually bring it back into the compost and you can actually make wonderful stuff that you can use in your gardens, in the spaces around you, I feel that you are bringing the wonderful valuable stuff away from the trash and reusing them in a way that has new value, has good value. And when you put that into the soil, your soil can regenerate and become better as well. If I'm not wrong, and I think I have to learn more about this, is that some people have said that if you put compost even just at the grass areas and you just let it be, your grass would actually capture more carbon, and therefore it's in a way a mitigation because you reduce the carbon emissions into the air as well. And I feel that even if some of us might not decide to do composting, but you know, if you can even just give your food scraps to someone who composts, it would definitely help a lot, because then the people who make compost have the materials that they need. And then if there is a lot more to share, you know, we can spread that out to more spaces, and then the spaces can be regenerated as well. And we don't have to buy compost, which right now, I think most of it is being imported from other places. And we do have some farms creating compost in Singapore, and they are mainly using plant material. So if you can actually make your own compost using food scraps as well, that is where you can really make a change, because you can integrate that into the compost that is actually used in Singapore.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Like, I think that's exactly what we needed to hear, right? Like, yeah, I'm glad. Hanjing, what do you?
So the first thing that came up in my mind is this tagline that we were teaching the kids when we were when we were in schools, called "Trash to Treasure." Right? So you are taking things that usually people find unwanted, but then turning them into a new life. And to me, that's what food waste is, because we spend so much time and resources into growing all this food, and then all the exploitation and everything, right? So so much has gone into our food, and then we finish them, and or rather we have those byproducts, right? These stems and everything. So what else can we do with them rather than just throwing it into the bin and letting it incinerate, right? If we are able to return it back into the earth, and then it creates this like cycle, this full cycle, where we are not just taking from the earth, but we can actually do something and give back. So that's what really keeps me going into making compost. And also the idea about like carbon sequestration, right? So that's something that I'm still like learning a lot about, but I think there's definitely a lot of potential. So the other day I was just reading a report, this research paper by one of these profs in Singapore, and it was saying that the roadside soils, it actually captures 25% of carbon emissions in Singapore. So you can imagine if that's just the roadside soils, right, which is the soil around the streets, which is maybe not full of organic matter. Then imagine like if every community garden starts composting, every household starts composting, like we could easily capture all of the carbon emission that is generated in Singapore. I mean, I don't know like how accurate is it, but I can definitely see potential in it. And also like the government was, I read somewhere that like burning food waste is actually not energy efficient, because there's so much water in it. It takes a lot more energy to like burn off all these things. So then that's why the government is like trying to push for this zero waste action thing, right? Trying to like reduce all the food waste in Singapore. So composting is definitely something that everyone can give a go at.
Do you see the movement spreading quite quickly in the next few years? Like, how can we contribute? I mean, you mentioned about food scraps, giving out food scrap. Are there any ways that we can also like highlight it more to maybe our neighbors? Like, who do we connect with? Like, are there channels that you recommend for us to connect with people who make compost, or like connect with maybe, I don't know, RC people to be like, hey, I want to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, right now, so there was a example that I was thinking of in my head, and maybe I'll say that first before I move on. It was one of our community members. He is running an edible garden in a school, and in the school alone, just under the tree where he does his composting, he can compost 50 kg of food scraps every day. And imagine if you have just that one space multiplied by all the different spaces around and in the parks as well. I think we can definitely do so much more. And if there are more of such places where it is community owned or community driven, I think we can see so much more potential for things like this. And I do see that the ministries, the agencies, the people that we've been talking to, they are definitely open for it. It's just that a lot of people also still do not understand what composting is, and maybe the myths and whatnot would stop them. But if there are enough people who say, hey, I am a compost maker and I know what I am doing and I can do that with my neighbors, then, I think we can really see the movement grow. And in Foodscape Collective, we have an initiative called Compost Collaborations. There's a web map on our website where you can see where the compost makers are and the food scrap givers are, and you can connect with one another. And right now, I think there are very few compost makers on the map. So if you are a compost maker too, please write in so that we can add you to the map and you can really start connecting with people. And what I think I want to say in response to Jaden's question just now is that I do know of community gardens, no matter even how established they are, how many awards they've won, they don't really know how to make compost, or they would like someone to help them. So they have always been telling us, come down and help us. If you in your own neighborhood realize that, you know, there are people in your community spaces who actually needs help, and you do have the resources to do that, you know, by all means, you know, find a way to do it. A few of us, hunting myself, we are part of a project called Project Black Gold, where we are collecting compost stories and creating a starter kit for people who want to do that with your own community as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with composting is, I think we were talking about it earlier, that we don't know how good it is, but we know it's definitely a net positive, right? There's no negatives to composting. But I think I wanted to ask you guys, I was thinking, the thing that came to my mind was Grand Hyatt, right? As a commercial initiative that was doing composting with their food waste on a large scale, and they created so much compost at such a large scale. They also needed to know where to distribute the compost, the excess compost that they generated. And so the fact that it's so efficient and does so well in Singapore to compost as well.
So I feel that we should have our own Singapore-made compost. It's a real product.
Made in Singapore. Yeah.
Made in Singapore.
Yes.
So you guys are running a series of workshops with Food Citizen?
With the Green Collective SG, yes.
And what are these workshops going to be about?
Yeah, so Food Citizen, we are working with Green Collective over the next 3 weekends, next 3 Saturdays. Yeah, next 3 Saturdays to have a series of workshops called Life After Food. So Life After Food is talking about, so punny, right? It's about, you know, after we finish this food, like what's next, right? And then we talk about life. So life is something that's like really alive and full of goodness lah. Yeah, so this is a series, it's a 3-part series. So there are 3 workshops in total. The first one is on aerobic composting. So in that workshop, I'll be really sharing about my experience, what is aerobic composting, how it's different from the other methods, also how you can do it in a HDB apartment. So if you have like little space, what are all the tips and tricks that I've learned over the years, how to manage good relationships with your parents, with your neighbors, with everyone around you, and not get sent away. And then also about, just checking out my notes here in case I forget anything. Oh yeah, so also about how to make your own compost bin. So I started with mine. So if you want to make your own, you don't need to buy additional stuff. So so basically we'll go through how to DIY and also answer any other Q&As that you have. So during this workshop, we'll also be giving a digital handout. Yeah, so that you can keep track of all this like truckload of information, right? So that can be very useful when you're composting for the next 3 months or so. And also we'll be providing follow-up support. So if you need a guidance, you need a friend to be with you, telling you if you're doing all right with your compost bin, we'll be here for you. Yeah, so that's for the aerobic. Yeah, that's for the aerobic composting workshop. Then the next one is bokashi. So bokashi is like a growing thing, right? Because people want to compost their meat, dairy products and all that. So with that one, we'll be working with Green Collective because they are selling this urban composter bin, which is very useful if you are living in an apartment. So the thing with bokashi is a lot of people buy the bin, but they don't know how to use it. Or rather, they just think that, okay, I dump all this stuff in, I spray it with enzyme, and then that's it. But they forget about the second part, which is after you ferment the food, you need to compost it, right? So you have a second part where you need to bury it and stuff. Then that's where people struggle. And usually they give up after part 1 because they don't know what to do for part 2 and they throw away the bin. So bokashi compost is, we have seen many
abandoned bokashi.
Yeah, it's true. So this workshop is ready for you if you want to experiment with bokashi. I would say come for this workshop before you go and buy the bin, so you know what you're getting into. And bokashi is great because it really speeds up the process. So I'm like doing bokashi right now, and it's been less than 2 weeks, and stuff is already broken down, right? So it's faster. Yeah, and the last one is vermicompost, which is also known as worms composting. So this is where we learn, we put it as the third one because it's slightly more difficult, but it's very fun. So in vermicomposting, worm composting, you use your little crawly friends to help you produce your compost. So in that session, we'll be going through what kind of worms, how to take care of them, how to create a nice home for them so that they don't run away, and they can be with you forever and, you know, give you good compost. So yeah.
Oh wow. Now I just feel so like supported, you know, it's like
We got you. Yeah. Right. The last important thing. So this Life After Food series is 100% of the profits is actually going to charity. We are giving back our profits to Acres, so to support the wildlife rescue because they are badly affected by COVID, and also to CMSC, which is the COVID-19 Migrant Support Coalition. Yeah, so to help our fellow brothers in Singapore. Yeah,
That's
so do
great.
join us if you can.
Okay, sign
Yeah.
up here. I'll sign up too. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Thank you
feel
so
like-
much for your
yeah.
time. Yeah.
No,
So
it just
you
really
can.
feels, no, I just feel like, you know, like you attend this compost group, you come up with some new friends, you know, some human friends who can advise you on compost, some worm friends who are going to stay with you forever. It's a great pitch. I love it. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much, guys. On the last note, if you guys have anything to say to our maybe people here who are starting their journey, if you have any last advice or words of encouragement to cheer everyone up, or, yeah.
So maybe I'll go first and then Stephen can wrap up. So actually I wrote down 3 tips. So I'm taking this very seriously. The first one is to never give up. So I tried for 5 years, right? So if I can do it when I was like when I was 20, you can do it too.
You were
So
set.
yeah, so I started when I was 20. So you can do it too, right? And then the next one is to be considerate. So because you're doing it with your parents, with your neighbors and all that, definitely when you're starting out, there will be, maybe it could smell if you don't know the ratios, but find out like what Stephen said, like she went down in the middle of the night, right? So the first few times then I was doing and it got stinky, I didn't like persist and then get angry when people comment on it. I threw it away and then I started again. Or what I did was I went downstairs, so I took a trolley and I carried all my pots downstairs to settle it because it's in a more open space. Yeah, and I say hi to all my neighbors, so they like me as well. Yeah, so no problems with that. Yeah, and then the last one is to have fun. That's very important because if you take it very seriously and you are with the mindset of I'm either going to succeed or I'm going to fail, you're going to have a lot of stress, which I don't think anybody wants that lah. So just have fun with it and have like, I would say almost like a childlike approach to it. Play, use all your senses, touch, smell, everything, and you'll be good to go. Okay, Stephen.
I wish I wrote down points as well. So I really resonate with what Hanjing is saying. And I think for me, because I didn't start off with I want to learn composting, I really just learned it from doing it with my neighbors. So it was really fun. We're just having conversations and then we got something really interesting and smells good some more. So in a way, I do feel that my journey had been a lot maybe easier than the rest in that it wasn't started with failure, it started with success. But then as I wanted to bring in food scraps into the picture, that was where I was like, okay, how do I do this? How do I talk to people? And then when I want to involve my neighbors, I'm like, hey, don't know whether my neighbors like this idea or not. It does require you to be a bit courageous, step outside your comfort zone. Because yes, maybe there is a growing movement of compost makers and food scrap givers, but it is a growing movement. So not necessarily everyone would understand you. And maybe sometimes people come, they help you, and then they go away, and then you struggle. So I do have a worm bin that the very first week, it became very fluffy.
Oh.
I was like, I don't want to do worms anymore. Oh no. But you know, if you try again, and you've learned from like, what happened? You know, how can I do this better? That's when my worm bin now looks a lot better. But I'm still not the person who's going to teach you about worm composting. But at least, you know, I did not like give up, and I think that's where composting is very if especially for aerobic composting, if you just do it, and even if you give up, you will still get some kind of output. And to allow yourself to just try and try again to the point where you're like, hey, you know, I'm quite good at this. And if you are making very good compost, I think even if you don't have a garden, people will want your compost because good composts are very hard to come by sometimes.
On that note, we have a lot of people, I think, in this chat who is looking forward to a Made in Singapore compost. So maybe we can all help to realize this in the future. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Maybe what I can do is also to send out an email to, you know, point everyone to the website and the map that you were talking about to connect food scrap givers and collectors. Yeah, so thank you so much for your time, and let's make that one step, just that one step to start a compost bin or something like that. Yeah, hope to hear more of Food Citizens' journey as well. Yeah, in the future. Thank you.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great Sunday. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.